Okay, so we're going to play around a bit with the brush tool, just so that you can see some of the things you can do with it. So I'm going to choose the brush tool, and I'm just going to choose a bright red to begin with, like a fully saturated red, and set the brush size up. So you can see that when the brush is in its normal settings, I'm just going to right click on this little brush icon and say Reset Tool. So this is the way the brush is set to begin with. I'm going to set the brush size up. So when you paint, it basically covers the pixels below, which is what you would expect a brush to do. So if I change some of the settings here, you can see that I can start to use the brush in a much more useful way. So opacity is the level of transparency of the color. So if I set that down to 50, you can see I can now see through the color. I'll set that back up to 100. Flow is a little bit different to opacity. It's kind of how much paint is coming out. So you can see it's a slightly different result. I also have this airbrush option here. So if I leave that off and I set my flow and opacity to 50 and 50, and I start painting, if I stop, but I'm still holding my mouse button down, and then I carry on, you can't actually see where I stopped. If I put that button on, and I do the same thing, I paint, and then I stop, can you see the way it continues to build up? And then when I carry on, you can clearly see where I stopped. So it's kind of like a spray can. If you are spraying with a spray can and you stop in one place and continue to hold the knob down, it's going to build up. So that is what this button does here. And then on top of opacity and flow, you also have blending mode. So for example, if I choose multiply, you can see that it multiplies that red with the colors below, and some of the other ones screen. So each one of these blending modes will give you a different result, and you'll be learning about blending modes in this course. So you can see that by mixing blending modes, opacity and flow, you can get some quite interesting results. The rest of these things here, smoothing, is basically just allowing you to have a smoother result when you paint. You can read up about these in the active learning. So I'm just going to revert this picture. And using what I've just learned, I'm going to make a few changes. So I want to change her eye color. So always zoom in Photoshop, you get a better result. And I'm going to choose a kind of green, blue, teal color. Okay. I'm then going to set the blending mode to overlay, and I'll set the opacity to 30 and the flow to 30. And then I'll bring my brush size right down, and I'm just going to paint around her eye, and I don't even have to be very accurate. Okay, so I'm overdoing it a bit. That's quite a heavy touch-up, but you can see that that is a very convincing eye color change. You wouldn't normally apply things like makeup using brushes. You can adjust it and touch it up a little bit, but actually if you're in a professional environment, the makeup artist will do their job first, the photographer will do their job, and then you do the final touch-ups in Photoshop. But you normally wouldn't apply makeup in Photoshop. But let's just do something just to see what result we can get. So I'm just going to use a kind of violet color, and with the brush tool we'll set it to overlay again, and I'll just use the same settings. Let's just see what we get. Okay, not too bad. So you get the idea that you can use your brush tool together with the settings at the top to do some quite interesting touch-ups. Now with darker eyes, so most people in the world actually have dark eyes. It's a couple of extra steps. So let me show you with the darkest eye here first. You need to lighten it up before you color it, otherwise it's not going to work. So I'm going to go down to the dodge tool. So you're going to learn about this tool in this learning unit a little bit later. What dodge does is it lightens colors, and I'm going to dodge the shadows, so the darkest colors, and then just with a smaller brush I'm just going to dodge, in other words lighten up around here. Okay, and I'll do the same here. Okay, I'm going to burn, so burning is darkening the midtones for the center of her eye, and so that it's nice and dark. Here. Okay, so now we can do our color changes. So I'm going to let's do a blue, and we'll leave it on overlay, same settings as before. Let's have a look. I'm obviously doing this really quickly. Okay, not bad. And let's do a green on this side. Okay, so you can see quite effectively change eye color. Okay, so next we're going to look at another brush tool called the color replacement tool. So sometimes you're going to have a situation where your client might present you with a photograph and say, you know what, we want this product in a whole lot of different colors. It could be a car or a t-shirt or a phone or something like that. And they don't necessarily want to have to photograph each color of the product. So in this case, let's just say that they wanted this car to be in another color as well. And so we have something called the color replacement brush. And this is how you set it up. So you need to choose the color that you want to replace this cherry color with, and you have to be realistic here. You can't go extreme, so you can't take this sort of like metallic cherry color and replace it with fluorescent yellow. It's not really going to work for you. You've got to keep within the same sort of color kind of range. So here I'm going to go for more of a navy blue color, or a racing blue. And then up at the top here, you've got to set some things up. So what you've got to do is change your mode to hue. What that means is change the underlying color, but keep all the highlights and the shadows in place. Then how do you want it to sample? As you paint, do you want it to sample as you go, the color underneath, and replace it, or do you want it to sample once? So in this case, once will probably work, because when I click to start painting, that first click will sample a color underneath the brush. So you'll see that the brush has this little cross in the middle. Let me see if I can zoom into it. That little cross is what the sample point is. So whatever that crosses over will be the color that gets replaced. Then there's some other settings here, like contiguous. Do you want it to be able to jump over from one place to another? So for example, the badge, do you want it to jump over from the bonnet to the badge or not? So I'm going to put it on discontiguous, which means it will do that. And then tolerance is how tolerant do you want to be of variations in the color. So I'm just going to push it up to 100. And now I position my brush so that the cross is over the cherry color. So not the darkest part of the cherry color, not the highlights of the cherry color, but a sort of representation of the actual color itself. And then I'm just going to click and hold my mouse down, and I'm just going to paint. And you'll see I don't even have to keep within the edges. I'm just painting over the whole thing, and even here where there's a reflection. And you'll see that it replaces that color actually pretty effectively. Now, if I wanted it to be absolutely perfect, I would need to make a selection as well, so that it didn't spill over a little bit into the headlights and things like that. But this just gives you an idea of how one can go about replacing color. Now, this isn't the only way of replacing color. There are many ways of doing it. And this is probably not the way that I would do it. I would probably use layers and blending modes, but this is always one to bear in mind to try out and see how it works. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and see you next time.